Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4.2 demo for the piece I call The Heretic. Now this is something that I don't do that often. This is a picture of essentially a real person. I mean, he dresses up in costume to perform, but this is Corey Taylor of the band Slipknot, a band of which I'm a fan of, and my son is a big fan of, so I thought that it'd be fun to actually just do this for him originally. That was why I did it. He actually sometimes even just calls the band Corey, which I think is kind of funny. But so I wanted to draw this for him. Now you'll see that this picture starts sort of going down one path and then it kind of changes. I knew when I started it that I didn't want to do something where I was going to render it a ton or I was going to do anything too special as far as like a really high level of finish, I guess you could say. But I knew it was going to be pretty graphic. It was just like, how was it going to be graphic? So what you're seeing here is the roughs, just trying to get the feel for him, trying to get the feel for not only his sort of like human head shape, but then also the fact that he wears a mask. And for those who are Slipknot fans, I sort of went for like what I would call maybe like a very late Gray Chapter mask. This is, I believe, sort of how the mask was looking towards the end of them touring for Gray Chapter. So anyways, this now, where the stage that we're at here is kind of cleaner, but what I'm really doing is I'm trying to capture some sort of energy that I kind of felt like I wasn't capturing, while also trying to be somewhat accurate. So you can see, like, for instance, I do his hand sort of like like it's grasping at nothing, sort of like a maniacal grab, and then I realize that doesn't really fit the music or fit Corey's posture, so I go with more of the closed fist just because that made way more sense. Now here on the clean lines, I decide to go with the fat pencil and just do a very clean version of that because the fat pencil is what I was using for the rough, of course, but in the middle of doing it I realized that it's not going to give me the edge that I'm looking for, the sort of energy that I was looking for, without putting a ton of work into it. So you'll see I actually take this all the way to like completing the entire head, and then I realize I should switch to something else, and what I end up switching to is the shale brush, and I use that to ink basically all the black that you see throughout the rest of this, all the line work. It was also pretty interesting to do Corey in this particular mask, because it's just interesting to do, like, his neck is his, but then once you get to the jawline and sort of the face portion, the upper face portion, like, that's all mask, but then you also have to make sure that like Corey's lips are in there and then his teeth are in there. It almost creates like an Evangelion like layering of teeth and lips and mask and all that. So it was kind of interesting to make sure that I was like hitting it right, while also getting all of the cartoonish sort of energy I was looking for there. I did quite a bit of reference gathering for this, but there are some things that I sort of either just did really quickly, like research really quickly and didn't really make it super accurate, or I just thought like, okay, well, with some of the ways that I've stylized it, let's change this and let's change that and just go with something more like this or more like that. And I think that really only applies to maybe some of the straps on the back of his head or something like that. Everything else is pretty on point as far as reference is concerned. At this time, he also had this particular haircut where the sides were shaved and the hair was like not really long but not short either on top, but it was good because I think as far as the simplistic image that I wanted to get, which is that like big tube of a neck going into like the chin face, it's a pretty strong overall silhouette, and I think that hair really helped with that. So now here you can see me testing a bunch of brushes real quick, because I'm like, okay, I want something that's going to give me something. So that's something I encourage you guys to do when you're doing art too, is try not to follow prescriptions where people are like, oh, I used this, so you should use that. It's more about just experimentation. I've said that a million times before, but I just can't say that enough, that, you know, find what you need in order to capture what you're looking for. So let's zoom in again. So now you can see me essentially recreate that. The nice thing is, since I did such a clean line with the fat pencil, I have a really good reference for, or not reference, but like straight blueprint. Let's put it this way, a rough sketch. It's like I'm actually inking clean pencils now, which is kind of cool and super, it's a lot easier than trying to do it off of the rough. So I guess you could say that what I was trying to do, how I was trying to handle this, this brush, is making certain things certainly clean and making them, making things pointy that need to be pointy and rounded that need to be rounded. But then also when you get to like the black fills, like keeping those rough still, because I wanted it to have, like I said, a graphic feel, but I also think that roughness can really give something energy. If it's just filled in black, there's very little energy that you can imply, but when you make it all sort of like scratchy like that, I think it adds a little bit of really just energy. I feel like I've said energy like 90 times in the last 5 seconds, but that's really what you're just looking for. It's sort of a scattered, random energy. So around this point, I know that the rest of it is going to go quickly. So what I start planning is how I'm going to actually color this. What brushes am I going to use? What's the final look that I want it to be? And I knew that I wanted it to be as striking as possible. So especially too with the sort of colors Slipknot has used in their branding in the past, I knew red was going to be important and black is important. And since he's mostly black, I thought, okay, well let's go with a big red background. The thing I was originally going to do though is I was going to make it just flat, like super graphic, like it's just a big field of stark red, but then I decided to make it a little bit more brush like, to give that some energy too. I wouldn't say that I was going for completely real materials with this, but I was certainly trying to have some of that be in the final version of this. So at this point I want to add more of that intensity, so I have the outer line sort of breaking apart and creating these additional lines around it that again bring some energy to the piece and some almost like a vibration effect. And now on a new layer I'm starting the hand. Why a new layer? Just basically because I want to keep it separate, and if I want to change something, like I want to change its positioning or maybe its size, it needs to be a little bigger or a little smaller, it's going to be easier if it's on a separate layer to begin with. So now we've got that clenched fist, and this outfit from this era is somewhat complex if I was going to be doing his whole body, because it has like this bulletproof vest and it's got I think it's got pockets, like cargo pockets, I think, and like boots and stuff. But since, it's pretty tight, it's not too big a deal. If it was the older boiler suit look, I mean, that's sort of like a super easy costume to do, but I was lucky that I could sort of fake it, especially not getting super accurate with the bulletproof vest, because since it's all going to be black and really dark, and that contrast is what I'm looking for, I wasn't too worried about hitting all those details and then just sort of blacking it out. I liked the positioning of the hands on this, because having two fists that are like symmetrical certainly gives like a strong pose, but it doesn't give quite the twisting sort of power that I was going for. So having that one, it's simple, but having that one fist sort of drop down and rotated out slightly makes it feel like this, it's almost like a vortex of power coming off instead of a beam of power, I guess you could say. It's just like a subtle twisting feel to it. Okay, so let's jump into the coloring, because that's going to kick in any second now. I start by putting in a really dark red background, and then start painting the red over it. Now, what brushes did I use for this? It's a flat just fill for the background, and then a lot of the painterly stuff like that right there is done with the stucco brush. And then I use the stucco brush in a couple of places, and then I change it up for some of the things. This is all the stucco brush right here as well, and you can see this is really desaturated compared to a lot of what I normally do. I wanted it to obviously evoke the vibe that his outfit evokes, and that the band's sort of branding evokes. And I didn't put a lot of bells and whistles in, didn't make anything too shiny, didn't make anything, there's no shadow on this, like there's no actual shadow layer where I go in and paint things, paint in shadows and try to build form. This particular version of the mask has a lot of black, sort of like soot or grease sort of like smeared all over it. Same thing with the mouth, so I'm going in here and making sure that that's accurate as well. And again, no shadow layer, so there's no real rendering, there's nothing adding sort of more form. It's really just the flats almost. Then I use a halftone brush to do that shading that's sort of coming up from the bottom there. It's more just like a gradient, it's just trying to focus, you know, where things are at. That brush that's sort of bleeding in along the side, and what you see me dragging through there is actually, funny enough, the heavy metal brush from the industrial brush section. And then there I'm adding just like a little bit more of the stucco mess at a slightly brighter value, and that's just to try and emphasize the sort of shouting and the spit that's all around there and all that. I thought it'd be nice to then bring some of that red into the jawline a little bit and into the hand, just to sort of break up those shapes. And then I add a little bit of extra darkening to separate out his arm from his body, things like that. And that's really it. It's sort of like a bunch of last minute tweaks that really sort of do some special things there at the very end. I hope you dug it. This was a sort of weird piece for me, just in terms of I normally don't do this kind of stuff, like do like a real person, but it was really fun to do, and it was kind of a quick hit in between a couple of more complicated pieces. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing, maybe check out a couple of other videos, and I'll see you on the next one. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.